Following Jesus isn't always easy, but it's not complicated. This is Simple Faith in 5. Each weekday, we take the teachings of Jesus combined with a scriptural discipline, and we grow our faith in 5-minute increments. Click subscribe to make sure you don't miss a one. Maybe you've known someone who was deeply hurt by a leader they trusted. Perhaps a pastor, a boss, a coach. They didn't do anything wrong, but the fallout still landed on them. Jobs were lost, reputations questioned, trust shattered. One woman described it this way: "It felt like a bomb went off in a room I didn't even walk into, but somehow I was still covered in debris." Bathsheba knows that feeling. Her story shows us that life doesn't feel random when we realize God sees and honors those who are wounded by the sins of others. Today, I want to walk you gently into a story that is both heartbreaking and hopeful. A story many of us know, but few of us have really sat with. It's the story of Bathsheba. Bathsheba appears in one of the most painful chapters of Scripture, 2 Samuel 11 and 12. And she shows up again in Matthew's genealogy of Jesus. Though Matthew pointedly calls her the wife of Uriah, it's as if the New Testament refuses to let us forget what happened to her or the cost of David's sin. Bathsheba was bathing after her monthly purification, a normal private act, and David saw her from his rooftop. And Scripture uses language that should make us slow down. David sent for her. David took her. In other words, this wasn't romance. This wasn't mutual pursuit. This was a king using his power, and Bathsheba had no voice in the matter. When she became pregnant, David tried to cover it up. He called Uriah, her husband, home from battle, hoping he would sleep with her and make the pregnancy seem legitimate. But Uriah, with a kind of integrity that humbles us even today, refused to enjoy the comforts of home while his fellow soldiers slept in the open fields. So David arranged Uriah's death. It's one of the darkest stories in David's life, and the Bible doesn't hide it. Nathan the prophet confronted him, and judgment came swiftly. The child born from this traumatic beginning did not survive. But Bathsheba did. And what's remarkable is how Jewish tradition remembers her. Not as a seductress, not as a woman who tempted David, but as a victim of an abuse of power. Someone caught in the gravitational pull of a king's sin and forced to live with the consequences. Yet, Bathsheba's story doesn't end in tragedy. Later, she becomes a woman of strength and intelligence and influence. In David's old age, when the kingdom was fragile and different factions fought for the throne, it was Bathsheba who stepped forward. Scripture shows her speaking wisely, courageously, and with authority as she secured Solomon's rightful place as king. The victim becomes an advocate. The powerless woman becomes a queen mother. And the woman once taken is now the woman who speaks, and kings listen. And then God does something astonishing. Bathsheba becomes the mother of Solomon, the man who would build the temple, the son God nicknamed Jedediah, beloved of the Lord. From a story stained by sin, God still brought forth blessing. But Scripture never sanitizes the beginning. Even in Matthew's genealogy, Bathsheba is called the wife of Uriah, not to shame her, but to remind us of the injustice done to her and the grace that carried her. Now, what does all of that mean for us today? First, Bathsheba shows us that God sees the suffering others overlook. She wasn't forgotten, not by God, not by Scripture, not by history. Second, her story reminds us that God does not whitewash sin, even when it's committed by His beloved leaders. God confronts it, God heals what it breaks, and God restores what it damages. And third, maybe most comforting of all, God can bring beauty out of deeply painful stories. Not by erasing the pain, but by redeeming the future. Bathsheba's life didn't end in trauma. God gave her dignity, purpose, and a legacy woven directly into the family line of Jesus. Jesus, the one who came to bind up the brokenhearted, comes from a woman whose heart was broken. The one who champions the vulnerable comes from a woman who was vulnerable. The one who redeems every story comes from a story that desperately needed redemption. Friend, maybe you have a chapter of your life that feels complicated or painful. Maybe someone else's sin left a mark on your story. Maybe you carry a wound you never asked for. Bathsheba's story whispers this truth: God sees you. God honors you, and God is able to weave redemption through even the hardest chapters of your life. Because His grace isn't fragile. His grace isn't naive. His grace is strong. It's strong enough to step right into the mess and bring something beautiful out of it. Well, each day we practice a spiritual discipline that's been used throughout the centuries, and this week we're using Lectio Divina, which means sacred reading. And today we're going to focus on healing and lament. Read Matthew 1:6 slowly. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. Let that phrase, Uriah's wife, sit with you. Ask, Lord, where do I still carry someone else's sin or failure in my story? What healing do you want to begin? You don't have to fix it. Just let God meet you there. Well, have a great day. And as always, keep it simple.